just one last panel session left, and the most infamous Adhar Masin is going to join us for that session. But I'm just going to set the context quickly. We spoke about all the metrics that matter, lesson from the sports world, the sciences, and the art behind formulating hypotheses, and a lot more. Here's a session that talks about what is it at the center of it all, building your product right to retain and grow. Handing over the stage to infamous Adhar Masan. Adhar, I don't think you need an introduction after the session with Biswa, but I'm just going to quickly still introduce you for the audience. Adhar stays in Pune. Yes, guys. He likes to stay in his house. Yes, guys. But he's also a product evangelist and drives enterprise partnership at Netco. Even beyond work, you will find him experimenting with nudges and riding his bike off. So for that, he goes out of the house. Take over the lead, Adhar.
Thanks, Akansha. Hi, folks. Glad to have everyone here. So if you're chasing growth through your product, the inception point starts right by building it right. So with a lot of varied users having distinct personas, how do product teams go about building it? Hi, I'm Adhar, and today with me, I have three diverse product folks who will be sharing their unique perspectives and insights from the lens of products that they champion. So who do we have? We have with us Mansi Narang. Mansi, there you are. Hi.
Hi, Adhar. Hi, everyone.
So, quickly introducing you, Mansi is a PM at Walnut Prime. She advocates digital credit. She is a BITS alum who has a voracious reader on all things product and also dabbles in fiction along with being a fitness enthusiast. Next with us is Shubham Bondia. Shubham. Hey. Shubham brews a secret growth and product sauce that helps propel Unacademy. He's an ex-Ola, so some insights coming in from there, and alum from BHU and IIT. He's passionate about behavior psychology and loves playing FIFA on PS. So, and finally with us, we have Tarun Valecha. Tarun powers, hey Tarun.
Hey.
Tarun powers product at AirAsia. He has been a startup founder before. He's an alum of IIT, who has been an ex of Flipkart and Tokopedia earlier, and heavily invested in the ecosystem of e-com and travel space. Beyond work, you will find him, scaling up on his badminton skills. So with that, we have a session packed with some interesting takeaways, and let's get started. So the first question, and I think, to set the premise for all of us, is how products have like a lot of varied user personas today. And how do you kind of go about arriving at the key persona for the product, especially when you're kind of starting off? And what parameters do you consider to kind of arrive at that key persona? So goes to all of you. Let's get started.
So first of all, thanks, Adhar, for the lovely introduction. So coming to personas, I think to define personas, one key requirement is that you deeply know of the problem that you're trying to solve from your product. Only once you understand the problem very well, you can then go on to think of, what kind of people actually face these problems. So coming from a lending background, some of the parameters that I look for is what does a person do for a living? So a person could be a grocery store owner. So businesses generally work on credit. So this kind of a person would always need credit. It could be someone like a yoga teacher who wants to, take a new course to upscale or want to start a new academy. Or it could be someone who is salaried and has a constant stream of income, but come Diwali, they want to buy a fridge for their, or pay some bills. So that kind of tells me why and when would they actually need my product. Once I narrow that down, another parameter is then comes in what can I offer to them, which is basically credit worthiness, which can be defined as simple as something like a bureau score. So someone with a low bureau score, right? UX is not the most important thing that matters to them. Like they need the end product, which is credit, which they might not be getting at other places. The features you want to focus on building theirs is basically having the right algorithm to assess their ability to repay. Whereas someone who could be a high bureau score, you want to make sure that you have the right marketing to attract that users, you offer the best experience to that users. So I think Combination of these things kind of build a persona for me. And they're also like a very great guiding factor to refer to whenever you want to think of, building any product feature.
I hear you there, Mansi, especially about looking at different personas may have very different needs as per way they are in their life and in their journey. So I think Shubham, you have something to add there. Go for it.
Yeah. First of all, Adhar, thank you so much for having us here. So coming to the personas question. So thinking from a very first principle approach, the intent of any product or any feature is to give value to the users, right? And different personas derive different values from your product. Some might just come explore, some might come and buy your product, monetize your platform. Some might just come and then add rights. Some might come and then repeat their behavior. So from a product point of view, or even from a business point of view, the key persona would be the persona which derives maximum value from the product. Okay, because if you focus on that persona, that is what will make you a differentiator in the market. That will in turn yield maximum growth for your product as well. Okay. So while defining the key persona amongst all the 10 different, and coming from a tech background, of course, you can imagine yourself, anybody who is coming into an tech platform, somebody might just want to learn, somebody want to test their learning, somebody want to take a quick quiz out of it. But you have to focus on the key persona that derives the maximum value. And some parameters which you can use, which we use here, can be what is the repeat frequency, what is the usage frequency, is the user coming for 1 hour in a day, or 1 minute in a day, or one day in a week, or 1 day in a month. Then what is the virality factor, especially if you're playing with a product which is in a space like edtech. What are your users saying to other users about your product? What is the monetization capability, because at the end of the day you need to keep the money flowing as well. So I think these 3 or 4 basic parameters, but keeping first principle in mind to make sure that your key persona derive maximum value from your product is the way to go about it.
Shubham, yep, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. Tarun.
Yeah, so I think both of them points were actually spot on, that you go and first of all look into your own data, look into your own values, look into your own company's objectives, right? And you try and identify that how do you go about looking at personas who will fit what you are doing, and who are the most important personas who help you achieve that goal. I think one of the framework which we often use, I'll just give a framework with regard to what we have been using, is RFM, right? I think everyone might be aware of it. It's a recency, frequency, and monetization framework. It is something which we use at AirAsia as well, because we have been expanding across a lot of business lines recently. And this is a framework which sort of helps us build user personas along those 3 lines, that how recent have the users come onto our platform, how frequently are they coming to the platform, and what are the average basket size or the transaction volumes at which they are transacting, right? We are able to identify that who are our sort of supremely loyal users, who are the users who are like across the board 10 on 10 champions, right? Who are the ones who are high value but don't really come that often, right? And based on that, we can figure out a strategy which works for them. Sometimes that strategy varies by lines of businesses as well. So yeah, that's how we go about it.
I see a lot of common themes in exactly what you shared, especially what Shubham and Tarun have just shared. So I think building on that, now that you have come up with the discovery of the personas and how to kind of serve them best, the product and the personas, they will kind of evolve as time goes. And how does the entire wheel of prioritizing and kind of building change over time? So, like kind of putting the time angle to the whole experience here. And how does this kind of vary from what we were doing when we were just kind of starting off, right? When the initial stages, it's quite different, right? You don't like have that history to kind of fall back to. So how do you kind of look at that piece?
Yeah, so I'll probably start. So I think it varies from currently, again, I'll just reiterate that, right? That AirAsia is going through a stage where it is transforming from a typical airline company to a proper tech company. We are launching multiple lines of businesses. We are doing few experiments which are not really related to say just the airline ticket selling as well, right? As an example, last year something which we launched was AirAsia Chat. right? So that's a product which enables social connection and communication between travelers across countries, right? So if you are traveling in a same flight, a chat group is created for you. We have multiple locations for which these chat rooms are created, like Kuala Lumpur travelers, Bali travelers, and so on and so forth, right? So when the product is at that stage that you are just launching something new, and AirAsia is not really associated as something like a social app, right? What you go about is figuring out the right set of mini experiments which can help you arrive at a evolved product, right? uh, but as it evolves, I think, and as different priorities come into being for each of the different products, I think something like, again, I'll give a framework probably which might help. Something like a Eisenhower Metrics helps, wherein you are just prioritizing between important and urgent tasks, right? Because at any point of time, there would be some subjectivity which would be there with regard to a lot of other parameters. But you then think about that, what are the things which are really important for our long-term as well as short-term goals, and what are the things which are urgent that they need to be done now, otherwise there is something which is going wrong, right? So that is something which really helped as we evolved, and not only in perspective to AirAsia chat, right? Of course, AirAsia chat evolved from just one chat room to multiple different chat rooms, and then the requirements kept on changing, and use cases kept on expanding as well, right? But similarly, as we are expanding different lines of businesses, you figure out that, okay, what are the ones which need to be done today, and what we can afford to wait till next 2 weeks, and so on and so forth.
Yep. Shubham, I'm sure you might have something interesting here. So
For sure. That I think what Tarun said was very valid.
yeah.
There has to be a lot of changes in the wheel, in how you go about the execution. However, from my point of view, the mindset shouldn't change a lot from the initial stages to the later stages, because in this time of technology, as your personas evolve, it also gives you an opportunity to evolve your business as well, right? Every persona evolvement provides new opportunities to you. All of them might not be in monetization. Some of them might be simple user growth. Some of them might simply be like a brand growth or a value growth. But persona evolution gives you opportunities, newer opportunities which were not possible before. And that is why I think a lot of IPO companies also stress on the fact that it's always day one, right? It's always day zero or day one, because they also don't want to get into a field where they're complacent about, okay, now we are not building 0 to 1 stuff, because at any given point of time, you would always build 0 to 1 stuff. That creates a lot of difference, or not only difference, a dent in your value offering. Okay. So I think with that mindset, I think the mindset should be that you always evolve in your approach. However, learning, of course, you have to take in the initial phases. You would always want to do the mini experiments. You would want to get there right first. You want to get the user sentiment right and provide value to them. However, at a later stage, you would want to refine more into it. A very interesting angle to this is also technology. Like many things changes because the technology evolves. 5 years back, a very good product or a business idea might not be technologically possible. Today it might be. Okay, and that's what evolution means to you. Like for an edtech platform like us, the first step would have been to replicate an offline classroom experience, so that our users feel as they are in a offline coaching center only. But now, if you think from that angle, we have the opportunity to go beyond that and do things which are not possible in an offline classroom. And an online classroom, giving a very simple example, something like giving a very metricized answer to a question asked by a teacher in the classroom cannot be done in an offline class. So in an offline class, let's say your teacher or an educator asks you that, okay, how many of you feel that option A is the correct answer? 10 or 15 of them would raise the hand. How many of you feel C is the correct answer? 20, 50, or 25. In an online classroom, you can exactly showcase, okay, 20% of your all class thinks A is the answer. 20% of your class took 5 seconds to answer this question. Things like these are not possible in an offline classroom. So if you go beyond and let technology enable what you provide value to the customers, I think that should be the key way to go about it.
I think I completely agree with Shubham out there. I have similar views. I think industry and specifically technology around us is evolving faster than we can ever catch up. So the industry evolves and your product has to evolve alongside it. And I think as your product evolves, your target audience or your personas you're building for also evolve. Just taking an example in terms of internet penetration also, like in India, you can literally divided into a pre and post geo era. Earlier people in tier 3 towns were not as comfortable with these, digital apps. So we will have some like kind of a sales guide out there who will explain a person how to download the app, how to fill in the details. And now people have become much more tech savvy. And like with the tech, there is also an increase in internet fraud. So features that we'll like now focus on is, making our users trust us and feel secure with us. So I think it's not just about prioritizing, but also you need to constantly be updated and change the personas and change the features that you want to build and as per the changing landscape.
Yep. I hear you, Mansi. And actually, very interesting to, what Shubham, you were saying earlier about mindsets. I mean, it's so important to kind of not lose out on that. And that's something new for me as well to learn along with you that I used to think that, that 0 to 1 would look very different than, later on. And that's an interesting take to that. And Mansi, building onto what you were sharing right now, we want to probably just evolve that a little more further and ask you like, now, would you go about kind of arriving at that right combination of who and when do you kind of prioritize in that journey when you're looking at features or even the product itself?
I think in an early stage company, there is always more work than the resources available. So prioritization is a very, very key skill for a PM. So there's a lot of advice out there on various methods and frameworks that are available. I like to kind of focus on two metrics, essentially, a qualitative metric and a quantitative metric. In terms of quantitatively, I focus on if I'm building a feature, what's the ROI that I'm getting from the feature, which is basically what are the number of users who are going to get impacted by that? And is the number of users, the distribution of these users tilted towards the target audience that I'm building for? And the second thing out there is basically the effort. How much time will it take to build it? Like these days, you have to really ship quickly, or you might the feature that you're building on might just become irrelevant, or probably your competitor will just ship it and get the market share. And I think beyond that, I also rely qualitatively on my product intuition to decide how high a feature is on a customer pain point scales. So, and in terms of these changing personas and evolving landscape, it's not just a one-time exercise. I think you should religiously review and update your roadmap like very frequently just to keep it relevant and relevant out there.
Thanks, Mansi. This is interesting. I mean, roadmaps seem to be something that you would not want to revisit often, but I think what you're sharing is that I think really looking at it not too often, but again at the right time makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. I think taking that to the next level, what I would want to ask, especially for Tarun and Shubham, is now that when it comes to creating you're trying out a product idea. You're doing a hypothesis testing. How do you as a team, as a product team, how do you approach it? Like, what are some of the various types of, say, testing methods, what works, and how do you even kind of look at now that you have an idea, like just, your team member, you have come up with one. What do you do next? How do you kind of go about the whole theme from there?
So, great question, Adar. And this is something which actually creates a lot of fix for any product team, because any good product team would always have new ideas to implement, would always want to create new products for the users. But the catch here is to make sure that this hypothesis testing is decoupled with A/B testing. What a lot of product teams make mistakes on is that for every hypothesis, they would immediately go back to their engineering team, their design team, and quickly A/B test it. Any kind of a hypothesis testing or even in product idea testing shouldn't be mixed with A/B testing. Testing an idea can be as simple as talking to one user. And trust me, the most insightful experiences which I have had in hypothesis testing or any idea testing has not come from A/B testings. They have come from talking to your users. A testing might be as simple as just showing a couple of artboards to your users and just asking them to just click on them, or just giving them a simple task. There are very sophisticated frameworks for this. Dog fooding, usability testing, focus group discussion, and things like that. But again, coming back to my first statement, keep a very, very first principle mindset. Identify your hypothesis very well. You have to know that how much you have to invest into this hypothesis. It might just be a survey of 10 users, which can give you an insight, or 100 users, or 500 users. The idea is to know your hypothesis pretty well and invest only what is required and decouple it from A/B testing. So I think, yeah, that has helped me so far and my teams so far in just reducing all the unnecessary effort and coming to the result, concluding the result faster than any other test can provide.
Yeah, I think I completely agree, right? I think different situations or different products where products are required different types of testing altogether. Product which is still in the stage where we are sort of figuring things out, right? Starting from UX research, doing some usability testing there, right? Helps, and it helps you sort of narrow down into a set of MVP as well. But even when you have come up to an MVP, instead of just launching the full-fledged product, you would want to sort of beta test it. What is beta testing is that you are rolling it out sequentially to a limited set of users, right? And you are seeing how the user behavior is. Again, quoting the same example of, say, AirAsia Chat, when we launched to only Malaysia market, right? Because Malaysia market was the one which was traveling a lot more for us. We wanted to try out in domestic flights and all those scenarios around that, right? And that gave us a lot of insights which help us build further for our international markets as well. At the same time, it limits the type of variables you are dealing with. You are dealing with limited set of languages, because pan-ASEAN, there would be like 6 or 7 languages and 6 or 7 different user behaviors, right? And it's not always possible to test everything in one go. So once you are in the stage where you have rolled it out, right, and for each and everything, of course, you are still doing usability testing and beta testing, right? But for something like, say, marketing, so when I work with the marketing teams on the growth teams at AirAsia, right, something which really helps there is, because it's anyways a campaign which is going to launch, right? So their A/B testing comes into much more fruition in that way, because it's an easy A/B test to do. You can test out even small things like subject lines. You can test out the entire content of the emails, right? And your experiments which you are figuring out can be across the board. So there would be certain experiments which are going on for usability testing. There are certain experiments which are going on for your beta testing. There are certain experiments which are going on for your A/B testing, right? So depending on the kind of scenario, the kind of requirement, kind of use case, you'll figure out that what fits better here. I think one thing which I'll definitely highlight is that a lot of what happens, because A/B testing is, of course, a good technique, is that a lot of analysis paralysis happens, right? That we A/B test a lot of things and we are going slow about it. So I think it's important to be mindful of what you really want to A/B test, as I think earlier was being said, right? That it's not necessary to A/B testing is not the only form of testing, right? There are other forms of testing, and you have to be really mindful of that. You are not unnecessarily increasing the effort for the same set of impact. So you have to be mindful that what are those decisions which are easily reversible, non-easily reversible, and you can test it out in a better way. So yeah.
Thanks, Tarun. So I think this is interesting, because I'm kind of building on that. So you said, there are different types of kind of going about experiments as well. So what are some of your efficient and maybe agile ways that you like to go back to try out different types of experiments, and especially kind of touch upon, and share with us and the audience, is like, what are some of the interesting experiences that you've had around, doing this while you're sharing, that will be really helpful.
So I think cadence definitely helps, right? So agile way about going about it is that you have smaller sprints, and the sprints don't really apply to only developer teams, right? So of course, when you are building a product, something like AirAsia Chat, right, you are targeting smaller goals, you are targeting smaller experiments, and you are trying to figure out, like, how AirAsia Chat started is probably just one chat room, not all the chat rooms at the same time, not all different uses at the same time, but just the willingness to check the willingness of the users, that are they trusting the AirAsia platform to chat here, right? Are they even willing to type messages to unknown strangers? And is there some inherent layer of trust which is there just by being on AirAsia app, right? But that changes a bit, because in terms of, say, growth teams, right? So in growth teams, we follow cadence of, again, weekly sprints, right? So we figure out what are the experiments which we really want to do, what are the ones which don't really require any development effort, right? Some experiments will definitely require development effort, but what are the experiments which don't really require development effort, and can we test out even the ones which require development effort in a way which is entirely based on other channels like push notifications, emails, in-app pop-ups, right? Is there a way to execute and get an insight into those experiments with a smaller scope, right? that gives you more sort of confidence, leverage. So I think ultimately it boils down to similar impact, effort, confidence kind of framework, right? But you are trying to build your own confidence with regard to smaller experiments leading to something big also. So with growth teams, I think weekly cadence works because you are always keeping your bucket list of experiments refreshing with changing scenarios, with more lines of businesses being launched or things changing in like lockdowns, right, in various countries. So you are always on top of it and you are coming up with experiments which suit the current market need. For growth teams, I think smaller cadences which are very relevant to the market, it should not be long cadences, really work, because 1 month later you don't even know sometimes that okay, what all would have changed, right? So it's important to have shorter cadences. It's important to still go about thinking about things which are non-developmental in some way, right, which can be executed standalone, and that gives you further insight into putting in more technical investment into it. Yeah.
Thanks, Tarun. Thanks a lot for
Completely,
that. Yeah. Sure.
completely agreed with Tarun. I think cadence is something which anyway puts a lot of discipline. Apart from it, one thing I would like to add here is that one very good and efficient way to go about it, which has worked for many product and growth teams in the past, is to democratize the whole concept of testing. Means it shouldn't be centered around a head of the team, or an engineering head, or a product head, or a growth head, or what, or whoever it may be. Okay. So by democratizing, what I mean is that it should be extremely easy for every team member in your team to build your own hypothesis and test it out completely end to end, development to release to analysis, and then going post prod. Okay. So this is one. Second thing is that many a times many growth teams or product teams think that all the responsibility of a hypothesis generation is upon the product managers or upon the growth managers. That is not true, and that is something which I do not agree with one bit. Also, every person in your team should be a growth person. An engineer would be a growth engineer. A product manager would be a growth product manager. An analyst would be a growth analyst. You can call them 10x engineer, 10x growth manager, or 10x QA as a popular lingo in the industry right now. But everybody should contribute in the idea generation and should be empowered enough to run their own tests. So this is something which helps a lot in running the show efficiently. Second thing to add here is to choose your hypothesis pretty well. You absolutely have to test things only which you have a strong conviction on. If you are testing 20 things and all of them succeeds, then you are doing something wrong. You are not testing, you are just testing in the name of building, obviously, because all of them your intuition is so good that all 20 of them have succeeded. Then you shouldn't test, you should directly go build. Similarly, all 20 of them can't fail also, because then you are thinking wrong. So I think these two principles help a long way to go in the product growth teams.
I think building on to what Shubham said on how we are PMs and we love experimentation and we love data, but the sad reality is that you cannot really experiment everything. So I think a good way here is that even if you cannot do a proper A/B test for something that you want to do, what you can do is ship your product to 90% users and just keep a 10% holdout just to see how it is playing out. If the results that you get is like quite off track, so you can always go back to that 10% and verify your results with the data, and that kind of ensures that you're not just shooting in the blind, and also helps you optimize data versus the speed of execution that you need.
Thanks, Mansi. I think I was smiling for both your answers, because there's something very interesting in the previous panel. We were just talking about democratization of data and how even decisions need to kind of flow through that. And it's very interesting to kind of actually see that very parallel themes, emerging across panels as well. So I think what I'm going to do next is just a quick fireside questions to all three of you. So I think, Tarun, I'll go with you first and talk to you about I think AirAsia, very unintuitive that, how chat is becoming a big product line there. So tell us more about the next, 24 months. What do they look like for Asia? Plus also tell us that is one of the hypotheses not, testing out for lesser legroom. So that will be really interesting to know.
Yeah, so Yeah, I think it stresses from the first point which I mentioned, that AirAsia is no more an airline company, right? AirAsia is evolving to become a full-fledged super app. What I mean by that is that in certain geographies like Malaysia, like Thailand, we are already doing things like food delivery, grocery delivery, beauty products delivery, right? I think COVID accelerated a lot of things. We were already in path in terms of extending categories, in terms of selling other flights on our platform, selling hotels on our platform, selling activities on our platform. So that was already happening, and that's already there now. But I think along with that, COVID accelerated some of the other expansions. Recently, I think we acquired Gojek Thailand's presence, right? So I think there are certain strategic initiatives which are coming along in the same areas as well. So next 24 months for AirAsia would be around more experiments. So I think I'll borrow the same thing, right? That in a tech company, it's always day one for you. Whether you are Amazon, whether you are Zomato, right? You are always experimenting, you are always evolving, you are always going towards a next step. And when you have reached that next step, it is again day one for you. So again, it's day one for AirAsia, wherein we have recently launched a lot of new categories like food, grocery, beauty. Some of the existing travel categories are of course hit by COVID, right? So I think in next 24 months there would be a lot of recovery there. Our initiatives in terms of selling other flights on our platform will also pick up, right? So those would be some of the important things which go on for next 24 months. Another thing which will happen is our customer journeys will become more evolved and much more mature in some way. What I mean by that is that our customer journeys pre-COVID would probably be just a travel kind of customer journey, right? In a travel customer journey, you retain a customer for around 3 to 6 months, right? As an example, you are retaining from the time they book the ticket till the time they fly, and you are doing all your communication, all your engagement along that longer time frame. But in a food app, in a grocery app, what we have sort of learned is that the time frames are much smaller, right? Your time starts from the order, and 2 hours later the order is delivered, right? So your engagement strategy changes a bit. Your engagement duration itself has changed drastically, right? So as travel comes back, I think that would be really interesting to see that how we mix all of these pieces together. How does the overall customer journey evolve? How do we build the new customer personas, which are sort of penetration across different categories and all those things, affinity across categories and stuff, right? So I think there are many interesting things which will happen. And this is just on the transactional side of things, right? On non-transactional side, there is AirAsia Chat, which will become much more important part of AirAsia as well. There are some certain experiments around content we are doing. So there are a lot of experiments, some small scale as of now, some already fairly matured, some being tested in few geographies as of now, and ultimately evolving, ultimately expanding to the entire ASEAN region. But I think the ambition is that at the end of 2 years, AirAsia becomes an ASEAN super app where we have multiple categories, multiple use cases. And the core theme remains the same, right? I think AirAsia as a right from 18 years back has been a company which has provided users with affordable options around their basic needs. It's just that those needs change from just pure travel needs to a lot of other needs, right? So the ethos around having a strong customer focus, providing the best service at the right price is something which will continue to remain as we expand through the categories as well. And I think interesting 24 months ahead. So
absolutely. I think AirAsia has that brand equity with users to definitely kind of go ahead with this. Looking forward to the journey. Tarun will be closely watching it. Shubham, let's look at, like with Unacademy, like is building for users is building for growth. I would love to know, like how do you look at it, at least at Unacademy, and how have you kind of achieve that balance between great user experience and extreme growth, because at least that's what I've seen and witnessed with Unacademy as a product.
See, so there is no balance to be struck here. Okay, so the company always has to be a value offering first. Means building a great user experience is the biggest growth strategy which I have come across. If your users love your product, if your users love your product so much that they go outside and tell about your product to other folks, your brand equity will rise, your growth will automatically kick in. Reverse to that, if you have a very, very strong growth strategy, which outperforms your user experience or value offering strategy, then it leaves your platform or product with a set of users who might come, who might give you a lot of growth, give you a lot of money, but they're not satisfied at the end of the day, and that is gonna sink someday or the other. So always be value offering first, and that is what our ethos has been. Great user experience is the focus area, and everything else, including growth strategies, are an enabler for it. Okay, and if you build a great user experience, if you build a product which your learners love and not only love, are using to get a certain success outcome in their life. For example, Unacademy is helping students crack the toughest exams primarily in India. So if your platform is being used to have a milestone in a user's lifestyle, if even one person is able to crack a very, very tough exam like IIT JEE or UPSC using a platform like Unacademy, that is where the real growth strategy lies. So always be user first.
Hear you loud and clear, Shubham. Mansi, I think what you're doing at Walnut Prime, micro loans, and again digital credit. Want to understand how do you build products for traditional markets? Like what goes on building this kind of fintech product that you are after?
Yeah. So lending has always been a very traditional market, which has a lot of physical and cumbersome processes, which kind of restricts this offering to only this tier 1, 2 cities where financial institutions are present. But if you look at Bharat, that's all about the tier 3, 4 towns or rural cities. There are a lot of people out there. So that's where the new age fintech companies actually come in. So we heavily depend on tech as an enabler, and so that we can reduce this physical dependence as much as possible, so that everyone has access to fair credit and just on a click on the mobile phone, irrespective of where they're located. So we want to build for that India stack. Also, there are in terms of user experience, there are some simple things which our banks don't do today, which has kind of has the need for these fintech companies. Like if I order from a food delivery company today, it'll automatically get my location and just ask me to input my house number. They'll not really ask me to input a whole address and upload an address proof and whatnot. Yeah. So that should be like the same ease in a financial product also. And I think for that, we always need to look out for newer technologies and how you can make even the smallest of the processes more digitized, especially because there are so many processes. And I think what people don't realize that behind this fancy world of fintech, you're dealing with people's money at the end of the day. So you're heavily regulated and you have to follow certain regulations and be compliant. So I think behind building any successful fintech is once you figure out how to be compliant and give the best user experience at the same time. So the idea is basically to have a one-click experience, which is just like buying a TV online. So, just like you can just buy anything, one click out of the Amazon, you should also be able to get credit on a one click. So I think that's what we and other fintechs are also strive to work towards to, build this industry.
Hey, you, Mansi, I think what I'm picking up from there, and I think the common theme which I'm kind of driving at is it's actually building trust. If you really look at it, that's what you're really after in a fintech space, for Bharat at least, removing it from the physical space and kind of building that trust online. And then you're talking about how democratizing, if I may say so. And then we look at, the same thing about data and the same thing about decision making here as well. So, firstly, I wanted to just, thank all three of you for joining me here, for joining all of us here and adding value to the conversations. We are running out of time, so I think there are a few interesting questions out there, but I think I'm going to skip those and hand it over directly to Akansha. Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Shubham. Thank you, Tarun. Have a great day, guys. And I'm glad you guys were able to make it here.
Thanks a lot, Adha, for having us.